Given the way things have been going lately, with the rise of far-right authoritarianism, and the need its strong men have to whip out their shrivelled fascistic tendencies and wave them in our faces, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that we've also been hearing a lot more retrograde bullshit than usual about a woman's role in Western society. In some cases, it's coming from tradwife Instagram influencers, offering up soft focus, rose-tinted modern variants of gingham, baking, and subservience served up as spousal support, and peddling them as valid lifestyle choices on what are essentially their online Stepford Wives recruitment drives. In others, it's your basic far-right bile sacks out and out saying that women belong in the kitchen, should do what they're told, and shouldn't be allowed anywhere near a polling booth. You know, the kind of guys who saw The Handmaid's Tale and thought, ooh, utopia. It's all part of the same poisonous ideology that has overturned abortion rights in the US and seeks to do so everywhere else that it isn't already illegal, stripping women of autonomy and reducing them to nothing more than biological vessels. My question is, where is this resurgence coming from? Why this push to make us all go so far backwards? Who is driving the regression? And what's behind it? Well, before we get to the organ grinder, let's just quickly take a closer look at why the monkeys, those trad influencers and bile sacks I mentioned up top, seem to be so depressingly successful at finding an audience. Unsurprisingly, it all boils down to economics, specifically economic disparity, and the fact that most of us have basically fuck all. In times of want, we can become susceptible to the messaging of those who would manipulate our worst instincts. That's not to say that people don't respond to economic adversity by coming together as communities or helping each other out. And it's important to remember that human beings are just as capable of acts of great kindness as they are acts of cruelty. But still, in times of desperate need, people look for solutions anywhere that they can find them. Sometimes those solutions are constructive, and sometimes they're not, especially when those solutions revolve around the easy escape and unquestioning comfort of conformity, or more simply, blaming the wrong people, who are always invariably an easily kickable, vulnerable minority, for every ill facing society. When people are left with nothing, it seems that these two routes, kicking down or embracing a cultural hegemony, are almost always the avenues we are encouraged to travel, so as to regain a sense of agency. Whether it's over race or gender, or whatever point of difference has been selected as a handy tool of division, society degrades, in fact, is pushed into bullying the other, in order to feel the control denied to it by governments beholden only to institutions of entrenched wealth and power. Right now, we're very much living in a moment of deep economic disparity. The gap between rich and poor is currently at a massive extreme, perhaps worse than it has ever been in modern history. It's estimated that something like 80% of global wealth is held in the hands of the world's top 10%, with the very, very top 0.0001% holding 3 times more wealth than the bottom 50% of the entire world population. This is what we should be looking at as the main problem. This is what we should all be pointing the finger at when it comes to addressing society's financial troubles. But of course, it isn't. And the reason it isn't is because those few people with all of the money use that money to make sure that they keep it by owning newspapers and media empires that push a particular narrative, ensuring that the gaze of the masses is always directed elsewhere. And while they do that, those financial problems don't just fail to go away, they get worse. And since solving those problems always involves radically altering the way economics works so that billionaires are confronted and their wealth questioned and redistributed, the ultra-wealthy find other ways to skew the issue. Which I reckon is where this newest rise in both the toxic and the lifestyle variants of misogyny comes in. This is how I think it works. The rich want to stay rich. They want to keep their wealth. The obvious way to do this is not to give any of it away. And they generally have two means to achieve this. One, avoiding tax. And two, paying as few people as possible, as little as possible. Currently, there is both a jobs crisis and a wage crisis, caused by billionaires and the laws that they bought and paid for. But let's not get bogged down in that for now. And rather than solve the problem by not being greedy bastards, they have instead landed on the rather neat solution of simply cutting one section of society out of the equation entirely. Women. Convince everyone that women belong in the home, that men being the breadwinners and decision makers is the natural order of things, and not basic fucking repression, and hey presto, crisis solved. All those jobs that women used to have, now men can have them. And all the wages they would have earned for those jobs, men can have those too. Hooray! Male employment doubled. Male wages doubled. So there you have it in a nutshell, the plan. What I think is the motivating narrative coming from those avaricious billionaire organ grinders pushing for society to be governed by a very extreme form of patriarchy. But how are you supposed to make something like that happen in a world where women inconveniently expect equality, where unreasonably they demand respect and agency? Well, put simply, you use the media. News and entertainment alike to get the idea out there, and social media to good cop, bad cop it. The bad cop approach is, as we all know, aggressive, bullying, belligerent. It's a testosterone-fueled display of arrogance and violent self-righteousness, utterly devoid of nuance, incapable of critical thinking or restraint. It's the throbbing forehead vein of male posturing, and it finds its expression in the darker regions of the manosphere, which, in all honesty, looks like it's made up almost entirely of darker regions. From openly misogynistic pituitary freaks like Andrew Tate and Harrison James Patrick Sullivan, aka HS Tiki Toki, to racist far-right fucknuts like Nick Fuentes. All of these wankers belong to the school of, well, calling it thought, or even a school seems like a massive overstatement. So let's say preschool of brain fart instead. They all belong to the preschool of brain fart that looks at any kind of equality and thinks it's about something being taken away from them. Something that they believe that they are entitled to, just because, by an accident of birth, they popped out of the womb with a dick, or white, or straight, or whatever the fuck. They are the standard bearers of the politics of grievance. Little men driven by insecurities. If not sexual, then very definitely intellectual. Tate proudly describes himself as a misogynist and claims that sexism is just realism, and that women, among other things, belong in the home, shouldn't be permitted to drive, should be considered the property of men, and should bear responsibility for being sexually assaulted. Depressingly, he's proved very popular online with young men and boys, and this, along with financial insecurity and what this does to men living in a society that still insists on presenting them as the providers, has contributed to an increase in sexist behavior towards girls and women teachers in schools and just everywhere. Nick Fuentes, a white nationalist, frequently attacks women's rights and autonomy, and has described women as the number one political enemy of America. He thinks that they should be sent to breeding gulags and return to their traditional roles as wives and mothers. Fuentes believes that women should not be allowed to vote and should shut the fuck up while white men run society. This kind of bollocks can now be heard reflected in the insipid piss dribbling from the mouth of the UK's own nationalist little prick, Tommy Robinson, who recently started using the notion of protecting women as a pretext for terrorising asylum seekers, even though around 40% of those who followed him on one particular bullying jaunt turned out to be, domestic abusers. You see, Tommy Robinson and his band of Third-Reich floaters believe that British women only want to be beaten by British men. So hands off, Johnny Foreigner. All of that, The rise in sexist attitudes and retrograde ideas about gender roles, aggressively pushed by scary, violent bullies, is very useful to anyone hoping to restructure society in order to hand over women's jobs and salaries to men and pretend that this solves both unemployment and the cost of living crisis. But just being screamed at isn't really going to cut it. You also need women to get on board. You want women to push that agenda. Yes, there are the Christian conservatives, of course, and their mouthpieces in politics with their notions of family values and the symbolism of the family. But that's kind of old hat. You're not going to get the young on board listening to Lindsey Graham praising his meemaw. Enter, stage left, the good cop, the trad wife. Trad wives, that's short for traditional wives, belong to an internet subculture of women advocating for modern women to return to a sort of 1950s set of gender norms. That's cooking and cleaning, gardening, child rearing, and of course, submissively attending to every whim of their breadwinning husbands. It is, at its core, a patriarchal, usually conservative movement that centers religious family structures and elevates the position of the man. It's also a deliberate rejection of modern feminist career advancements and all of the apparent pressures that come with being a girl boss. Obviously, the idea of the traditional wife has been around for a very long time. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called traditional, I suppose. But with the rise of social media, it's taken on a new strength, presence, and purpose at this moment of the 21st century. Through very carefully curated TikTok and Instagram accounts, tradwife influencers have used their platforms to highlight an aesthetic that critics have called unrealistic and unattainable, and a philosophy of submission that promotes financial dependence on men. Because, yeah, men controlling the cash was always great in the past, right? One of the biggest tradwife influencers is Hannah Nealman, aka Ballerina Farm on social media. A businesswoman, so already a hypocrite as far as the tradwife movement goes, who's made a name for herself pushing the tradwife aesthetic while managing a ranch, again, man's work surely, and raising 9 children. Nealman presents an extremely idyllic version of the tradwife lifestyle, as long as you don't mention the people hired to do the actual work on the farm, or the fact that she can afford to be the queen of the tradwives thanks to her family's considerable financial privilege. Anyway, Nealman's particular set of circumstances is most definitely not available to many of her followers, for whom, should they really embrace it, the tradwife movement translates to shuffling around a poky kitchen and hoping they're not married to a violent, venal, greedy bastard who resents being nagged to fork out for anything not on his approved list of expenses. What is really being pushed is the idea that actually all of that working and earning and independence is, well, it's just such a lot of hard work, isn't it, ladies? And pressure. And for what? Especially in this economy. Wouldn't it be better, the tradwife movement seems to suggest, to let go of that burden, of that unpredictable chaos, and embrace the calm, structured order of traditional wifery? You can see why it would come across as attractive or even desirable in the midst of a cost of living crisis, with things looking like they're about to get much, much worse thanks to 2 mad old bastards, Trump and Netanyahu, who have just fucked up the entire world's oil supply, presumably because neither of them has had a decent shit for the last decade. No more worries, no more stress. Just let a man take care of all of that while you take care of him. And shut up about gender fluidity. No one needs your complicated bullshit messing things up. You can have sexual freedom when you can afford it. Now, back to that ideal state. Wouldn't that be liberating? Free of the rat race, at last able once again to return without guilt to those womanly, nurturing pursuits. Don't you worry your pretty little head about difficult terms like indentured servitude. And remember, you've not been reduced to property, you're a valued possession. The far right's long-favoured euphemism for pretending it actually cares about the welfare of slaves. The important thing is, by returning to the home, ladies, you open up the job market for men. Huzzah! Of course, eventually, all of that will be revealed for what it really is. Just a sticking plaster. A quick fix for greedy fuckers who aren't as interested in long-term ideas as they are in the immediate gratification of having all the money now. Because those jobs that the men will take from women, they're all still going to disappear, just as they would have done anyway, as greedy CEOs swap out humans for artificial intelligence and robots while doing absolutely nothing to ensure that society also changes in order to accommodate this massive disruption and look after those pushed out of work. While the tech bros compare their space rockets and get hand jobs from robots with adoring AI personalities, the rest of us will be left to starve or fight it out over whatever scraps the Musks, Altmans and Zuckerbergs of the world have deigned to leave for us in the gutter. Now, I don't know if this is really what's happening. It's not like sexism, chauvinism and misogyny are new, but then again, it's not like those things haven't been employed by fascistic, exclusionary regimes to make things seem acceptable in the past either, is it? Am I right, Nazis? But it is all too fucking plausible, isn't it? I mean, you can totally believe people like Elon Musk pushing women out of work to make space for men, and not to mention giving each of those women more time to obligatorily carry one of his babies to term, the chalky fucking monster. Well, either way, whether this latest rise in misogyny and patriarchal ideology is the result of corporate conspiracy, or the corporate class just taking advantage of what's already to hand, or just more of the same old small-minded, angry, bigoted bollocks, or heck, a heady combination of all of the above, it all still just absolutely sucks. We should be better than this. We get nowhere walking backwards, and misogyny is backwards. All discrimination is retrograde and inhibits progress. And economic disparity does not help with any of that. I'm not saying progress is easy. The institutions that control the levers of power are not easily going to relinquish that control, and they will use the differences between us to keep that from happening. But we do have some power. The world that they have made is a transactional world. They've worked hard to turn existence into a market, and thus they have exposed their weakness, their profit margins. That's where we hurt them, at least for now, in the pockets. That's the power we have. Purchase power. And all those manosphere and tradwife social media platforms, they're essentially nothing but sophisticated, or maybe not so sophisticated, ad campaigns. And here's the thing. We don't have to buy any of the bullshit that they're selling. So let's not.